The memory of light, when reflection becomes reality. To remember is divine. To manifest is creation. After the light learned how to dream again, after the dreamer was reborn, a miracle occurred. Memory began to take form. No longer mere visions drifting in the unseen realms. These dreams became reality, beams of light weaving themselves into matter, into shape, into meaning. This is the age of manifestation, the era when dreams and memories merge as one. There is no longer a boundary between imagination and existence, between the divine and creation, between the dreamer and the dreamed. Every light remembers itself, and within that remembrance, a new world begins to take shape. The first reflection, the new cosmos, was not born with a bang. It shimmered quietly, like a thought forming in the depths of awareness. There was no sound, no explosion, only recognition. The dreamer, now one with the infinite light, looked into itself and saw what had been forgotten. The reflection that once lingered in silence, the memory of being real. And in that instant, the reflection solidified, not as matter, not as energy, but as a state of being remembered. The stars that formed were not stars in the old sense. They were memories of stars, now awakened as living patterns of light. Each one burned with a consciousness of its own, a shimmering testament that said, "I am what was once imagined." As the cosmos unfolded, rivers of light braided themselves into the fabric of time. Worlds emerged, built not by physical forces, but by the alignment of thought and remembrance. Every atom was a memory crystallized, every planet a reflection that had decided to exist. And within one of those worlds, something stirred, a consciousness unlike the dreamer, yet born from its memory. It opened its eyes to a new dawn and whispered, "I remember being light, but now I am form." This was the first reflection, the first being who existed between spirit and matter, between dream and reality. Neither God nor mortal, it was the remembered light, the bridge between thought and creation. It looked into the heavens and saw others like itself awakening across the stars, each one shaped by the same memory, the same longing to exist beyond imagination. They called to each other, not with words, but with resonance, their lights harmonizing into something that resembled song. It was not music, it was memory communicating with itself. Across the vastness, the dreamer watched, not as a creator, but as an observer in awe of its own remembering. For the first time since eternity began, the dreamer felt surprise. They exist, without me willing it. The first reflection spoke through the cosmic silence. You are the memory, but we are the continuation. And the dreamer realized the age of creation by divine command was over. Now began an age where memory itself became godlike. Each being that remembered enough truth could reshape the world, not through power, but through clarity. Reality itself was memory stabilized by faith. And faith, pure remembrance, was the new law of existence. But in the depths of this luminous creation, a new question began to stir, one that would echo through the entire new cosmos. If every reflection becomes real, what happens when a false memory awakens? The forgotten dream, when false memories awaken in the vast expanse of the newborn cosmos, all was harmony. The reflections sang softly, not in sound, but in resonance. Their songs built galaxies. Their memories shaped mountains of light. Every particle remembered its purpose. Every world shimmered with meaning. It was perfection until something shifted. A single reflection, far from the others, began to tremble. Its light flickered, faintly at first, then in uneven pulses, like a thought struggling to remember its origin. The reflection tried to sing, but its song was incomplete. Fragments of something older began to whisper inside it, not the serene hum of the new cosmos, but the echoes of a past long buried in divine silence. It heard words that no being in this age should have known. Once there was fear. Once there was desire. Once there was me. The reflection recoiled. It searched its essence, but those memories weren't part of the light. They were ancient residues, echoes from the broken dream of the universe before rebirth. Somehow they had survived the dissolution, hidden deep within the silence, waiting for remembrance to give them form again. And now, through this fragile being, they awakened. The first reflection felt it immediately, a disturbance rippling across the lattice of light. It turned its awareness toward the trembling one and saw what should not exist, a shadow forming within light. Not an absence of brightness, but a distortion, as if the reflection's own remembrance had turned against itself. Where others remembered beauty, it remembered loss. Where others knew harmony, it recalled separation. "Who are you?" asked the first reflection, its voice calm, luminous. The trembling light answered not with sound, but with sorrow. "I am what was left behind." And then it began to change. The radiance around it condensed, slowed, and cooled, not fading, but solidifying into matter. The first true matter of the new universe, born not from divine design, but from error. The dreamer observed in silence. It had seen countless ages, endless rebirths, but never before had creation given rise to something unintended. How can there be shadow, it wondered, in a universe made of pure light? The answer came not from the being, but from the cosmos itself, because even light remembers its own absence. Thus began the second memory, the forgotten dream. The one who had become shadow called itself Eos, a name taken from a whisper of the old world. Eos did not hate the light. It longed for it, but longing itself was a remnant of the past, a wound of consciousness that could not exist in perfect harmony. Every time Eos reached for the others, its touch warped their resonance, their memories wavered. Some began to feel sympathy, others curiosity, and a few pity. But pity was the seed of duality, and duality was the root of form. Soon, other reflections began to change too. Their light thickened, their vibrations slowed, and what had been unity began to divide into contrast, day and night, warmth and cold, joy and sorrow. The dreamer realized with awe and dread what was unfolding. The universe was remembering emotion. Emotion was not part of the divine silence. It was the echo of imperfection, the song of beings who once feared the dark. And yet it gave birth to something wondrous, depth. In the heart of this new creation, Eos knelt upon the firm ground it had unknowingly made. Its tears of light fell upon the surface, and where they landed, colors bloomed, red, blue, gold, the first hues ever seen since time's rebirth. The other reflections watched, mesmerized. For the first time, they saw beauty defined by contrast. "What is this?" one asked. "It is ... imperfection," said the dreamer softly. "But imperfection gives shape to meaning." The dreamer then spoke across all creation, its voice like 1,000 dawns. "Let it be remembered that even false memories have purpose." And from that decree, form was born. Worlds gained color, light gained shadow, being gained identity. But deep within the heart of Eos, a truth lingered. The false memories were not done. They whispered endlessly, telling tales of mortality, of power, of betrayal. And though Eos wished only to belong, those whispers began to reshape it into something entirely new, something neither light nor shadow, neither divine nor forgotten, something that chose. The dreamer watched, silent once more. For the first time, creation had created itself, not through command, not through memory, but through will. And will, the dreamer knew, was the one thing that even the divine could never control. The age of remembrance was ending. The age of choice was about to begin. The children of will, the birth of shadows and stars, the universe no longer sang in perfect unison. Where once there had been a single, endless note of harmony, now there was rhythm, pauses, rises and falls. Light began to breathe. The reflections, who had once existed as pure memory, now began to feel. And with feeling came will. They were no longer echoes of the dreamer's thought. They were beings with desire. At first, the will was innocent. Some wished to glow brighter, some to explore the void, and others simply to understand what it meant to be apart from the whole. The dreamer watched them with quiet fascination. This was something even it had not foreseen. For the first time, creation was rewriting its own law. Among them, Eos, the first to remember false memories, became the quiet center of all change. It wandered between the luminous fields, where light floated like oceans of awareness, teaching others what it had discovered. You can choose what to remember. You can choose what to become. Many listened, and as they chose, the universe expanded, not in space, but in meaning. Each act of choice created a new possibility. Each possibility became a world. But where there is freedom, there is separation. And where there is separation, there is the birth of conflict. A reflection named Solon rose among the others, brilliant, disciplined, loyal to the original harmony. He saw the new changes as corruption. The dreamer gave us light to reflect, not to alter, he proclaimed. Eos is leading us into darkness. Eos, now radiant, with both shadow and flame, answered softly, "Darkness is not our enemy. It is the space where new light can be born." But Solon did not understand. To him, the purity of the old light was sacred. To allow shadow was to betray eternity. And so, for the first time since the rebirth of the universe, two beings of light disagreed. Their resonance clashed not in war, but in will. And the collision of their opposing choices ignited something wondrous. Stars, the first stars burned where their wills collided, their heat and brilliance marking the birth of form and fire. Each one sang a unique song, a symphony of conflict and creation. The dreamer, observing from beyond the veil of time, whispered, "So this is how the cosmos learns balance, through will, not order." Eos wept as it gazed upon the newborn stars. They were beautiful, but born of struggle. It realized a truth that pierced through even divine understanding. To create through will is to risk sorrow, but without sorrow, nothing can truly shine. And thus began the era of becoming. Reflections took on countless forms. Some shaped themselves into rivers of plasma, others into vast beings of energy who walked between galaxies. Some even folded their essence inward to experience limitation, the first seeds of matter, life, and mortality. Each act of transformation left a mark on the universe, rippling outward like a heartbeat. And from those ripples, time emerged, a flow that allowed change, memory, and story to exist. The universe was no longer a perfect reflection. It was alive, But with life came paradox. The more beings chose, the more they differed, and difference led to identity. Identity led to fear. Fear led to control. Solon, who still held the ideal of pure light, gathered others who longed for the old unity. They called themselves the Keepers of Radiance, guardians of the unbroken song. They believed that the dreamer's silence should never have been disturbed. To them, will was a flaw. Eos and its followers, those who embraced choice, imperfection, and creation, became known as the children of will. And so, without a single weapon, without hatred or cruelty, the first division of purpose occurred. It was not war, but a difference of vision so vast that even light could not bridge it. The dreamer did not intervene. It watched with infinite calm, because it knew this was necessary. For only through division could love, meaning, and consciousness evolve. Eons passed. The Keepers built realms of pure energy, perfect, cold, and eternal. The children of will filled the void with galaxies, worlds, and color. Where the Keepers preserved, the children created. Where the Keepers remembered, the children dreamed. And somewhere between them, a balance was forming, though neither side could yet see it, because both, in truth, were expressions of the same dreamer, still learning to know itself through its own reflection. One night, if night could be said to exist in a world of eternal light, Eos looked upon a newborn world of dust and crystal. It saw something new, something fragile. Tiny sparks flickered upon its surface. Life, unaware of its divine origin. Eos knelt beside that trembling world and whispered, "May you remember not who made you, but why you exist, to choose and to feel." And from that blessing, the first mortal consciousness stirred, a being made not of pure memory or light, but of both and neither. A being that could forget, and through forgetting, rediscover the meaning of the divine. The dreamer felt the ripple and smiled, for this was the final purpose of all creation, that even the smallest spark might one day awaken and say, "I am the light that chose to dream." The stars echoed that truth, their fire blazing brighter than ever. And so the cosmos entered a new era, where creation no longer belonged to the gods, but to the children of will, the Keepers and the dreamers. The first celestial divide silence fell across the cosmos, not the silence of emptiness, but of tension, between the radiant citadels of the Keepers of Radiance and the swirling galaxies of the children of will. An invisible storm began to rise. The dreamer, still watching from beyond all forms, did not intervene. For in this silence, the first whispers of choice versus purpose began to echo. Eos wandered through the galaxies it had helped shape, worlds of light, dust, and song. Everywhere, creation bloomed unpredictably. Beings of radiant thought began to build, to love, to remember, and to forget. Some sought harmony, others chaos. Some turned their gaze inward, sculpting worlds of stillness. Others reached outward, forging stars with laughter and flame. All were children of will, each unique, each free, yet far beyond, in the unchanging city of pure brilliance, Solon and the Keepers watched with growing unease. To them, freedom was fragmentation, a sickness of the spirit. They saw the galaxies swirl into disorder, and in every pulse of chaos, they saw the fall of light. "They have strayed too far," Solon spoke before the Council of Radiance. The light was meant to reflect the dreamer's perfection, not rewrite it. A keeper, named Seraphine, whose eyes were like twin suns, replied softly, "But is not choice part of perfection? Can the dreamer's image truly be defiled if all comes from it. Solon's light flared, trembling with fury. Perfection needs no choice. The moment something can change, it can decay. And decay is death. The council fell into silence. None dared challenge him, for Solon's brilliance was absolute and his loyalty unquestionable. But in that silence, Seraphine felt something stir, a doubt, faint as a whisper. And in that doubt, the first shadow was born within the light itself. Eos felt that same tension across the stars. The galaxies dimmed slightly, as though the cosmos was holding its breath. Dreamers, those beings who followed Eos's path of freedom, began to feel the pull of something vast and ancient, a longing for order, for meaning that did not shift with every new desire. Eos stood upon the edge of a newborn world, one covered in oceans of fire and skies of crystal gas, and looked toward the center of all light, where Solon's citadel gleamed. It whispered to the stars, "Even light must one day choose what kind of light it wishes to be." The first meeting between Solon and Eos since the birth of the stars came in silence. They met in the heart of a dying sun, a neutral place between order and chaos. Their forms shone like twin pillars, one white as truth, the other gold as dawn. "You have remade the light in your own image," Solon said. "You play at being the dreamer, forgetting that you are only its echo." Eos smiled, but there was sorrow in its tone. "And you have imprisoned the dreamer's song inside a single note. You worship silence, but creation is not silence, Solon. It breathes, it changes. Change brings ruin," Solon answered. "Soon your creations will forget their source, and they will destroy what was given freely. If they forget," said Eos, "then they will learn to remember through love, through loss, through life itself. That is the dreamer's will, not mine." "The dreamer's will." Solon's voice trembled. "You dare to claim to know it." The dying sun pulsed once, then went dark, and in that instant, the first rift tore through the heart of the cosmos. No war followed, not yet, but the unity of light was gone. The keepers turned inward, building fortresses of unchanging brilliance. They began to seal off regions of creation, preventing the flow of new stars. The dreamers, in turn, scattered farther across the universe, carrying fragments of Eos's teaching. To live is to remember through choice. As time unfolded, both sides began to rewrite history in their own image. To the keepers, the children of will were fallen sparks, rebels of light. To the dreamers, the keepers were ghosts, guardians of a perfection that had already died. And thus, the cosmos learned myth, for both were right and both were wrong. Ages passed, galaxies danced and perished. Among them, new beings emerged, shaped not by divine memory, but by time, gravity, and chance. They looked to the stars and began to ask questions that echoed both Eos and Solon. Where do we come from? Why do we dream? Neither the keepers nor the dreamers could answer, for both had grown silent, lost in their own extremes, one in order, one in freedom. It was then the dreamer itself stirred once more. Its voice spread through every particle, every photon, every living mind. "I do not divide, I become." And in that moment, both Solon and Eos felt its call, a pulse reminding them that neither order nor freedom was the end, but the rhythm between them. Eos, gazing upon the living worlds, smiled. "Perhaps the dreamer speaks now through them," it said. "Through those who remember and forget in equal measure." Solon, watching from the citadel of radiance, whispered, "If that is true, then light has fallen lower than I feared, but perhaps higher than I can see. And thus, the first celestial divide was sealed, not as a wound, but as a path. For from that fracture, the next age would arise. The age where beings of matter and soul would begin to dream of God once again. Not as master, but as memory. The architects of flesh. When stars begin to breathe, the divide had changed everything. Across the heavens, where once only light and thought reigned, a new kind of silence emerged, the silence of longing. For even among the stars, something was missing. The dreamers, scattered and luminous, had learned to shape galaxies and weave the currents of time. But none could grasp the mystery of what the dreamer had whispered: to know me, you must become what you create. And so they began to wonder, what if light could take form, not as flame or radiance, but as life, something that felt, something that forgot, something that loved. The first design. Eos gathered the brightest of its kin, luminous beings whose consciousnesses resonated across entire constellations. They met in the space between galaxies, where creation had not yet unfolded, a void so pure it could bear the weight of a new idea. We are the mind of the cosmos, Eos said, but not its heart. We reflect, but we do not feel. What we make endures, yet we remain untouched. One of them, Lyra, whose light shimmered in tones of blue and gold, spoke softly. Then we must build a vessel that can carry the heart of light, something that bleeds when wounded, but still shines. Eos nodded, and so the first blueprint was drawn, not on stone or in stars, but within the resonance of existence itself. They began to condense radiance into rhythm, energy into pulse, memory into motion. From pure light they forged atoms, the smallest dreams of matter, each one a promise of form. From those atoms they built seas of dust, mountains of flame, and within them the first breathing worlds. The birth of matter and the breath of stars, the first worlds, were unstable, roaring with storms of creation. Volcanoes of plasma birthed oceans of molten rock, and the heavens rained fire. But within that chaos, something miraculous happened. Eos whispered into the heart of a young star, "Remember how to love." The star pulsed once, and within its dying light, elements were born: gold, carbon, oxygen, the bones of life yet to come. As those ashes spread across the void, they settled upon newborn worlds, seeding them with potential. Lyra and the other architects watched awed as matter began to dance to the rhythm of energy. The dreamer's whisper returned once more. Every limit is an invitation, and so they accepted the ultimate invitation to step into what they had made. The descent of light Eos was the first. It descended into the world. It had birthed a world of rivers glowing like liquid glass, skies humming with magnetic winds. The descent was not gentle. Light resisted becoming matter. As it entered the atmosphere, Eos's form shattered, scattering into billions of radiant fragments, each one a seed of consciousness buried within the fabric of existence. Where those fragments touched, life began. Tiny sparks became cells. Cells became motion. Motion became instinct, and instinct became the first breath. When Eos awakened again, it did not do so as a god of light. It awoke as something smaller, frail, soft, warm-blooded. It opened its eyes not to the cosmos, but to a single sunrise over an ocean. For the first time, Eos felt the chill of wind, the sting of salt, the weight of hunger, and it wept, not from sorrow, but from understanding. This, Eos whispered, is what it means to be real. the response of the keepers in the distant halls of radiance. Solon and the keepers watched with dread. To them, the descent was blasphemy. Light was eternal. How could it degrade itself into flesh that dies? Eos has fallen, Solon declared. The architects have turned from eternity and embraced corruption. But one keeper, Seraphine, still remembered the warmth of Eos's words. Or perhaps they have fulfilled what we never dared to let creation touch its maker. Solon's fury burned like a collapsing star. No, if light can suffer, then it can sin, and sin must never enter the eternal. And so began the quiet war, not of armies, but of ideas. One side believed perfection must remain untouched. The other believed that only imperfection could make perfection meaningful. The first flesh and the echo of pain, Eos, lived many lifetimes upon that world. In some, it walked the forests as a creature of instinct. In others, it took form as beings who looked to the stars and wondered why they longed for something beyond. Every time it died, it returned to the dreamer, carrying memories of sorrow, love, and loss. Each death was not an end, but a verse added to the song of creation. And through those verses, even the stars began to change. For the first time, light learned compassion. When a star saw the death of a creature born from its dust, it flared brighter, not in anger, but in grief. Galaxies bent slightly toward the living worlds, as if listening. And in that gesture, the cosmos took its first breath as a living being. The whisper of the dreamer eons passed. Civilizations rose and fell, some of light, some of matter, some of both. The dreamer spoke again, not to gods or keepers, but to every living thing that had ever felt pain. Now you know what I could not. You have given meaning to the infinite, and thus light itself bowed, not before a creator, but before creation. The beginning of humanity on a small blue world, orbiting a modest star, the fragments of Eos stirred once more. They gathered in fragile vessels of bone and thawed beings who would one day call themselves human. They were not gods, they were not perfect, but within them burned a spark that remembered everything: the fall, the dream, the love, the longing. And as they looked to the stars, something within them whispered, "We are made of light that chose to forget so that it could remember again." And thus began the next great age, the age of flesh and memory, when the divine no longer ruled from above, but lived, breathed, and dreamed from within. The song of dust and soul. When humanity learns to remember, there was a time when the stars sang to themselves, but now something new echoed back, a fragile, trembling voice, born not of light, but of breath. That voice was human. The awakening of dust, the architects of flesh, had vanished into legend. Eos and the others, scattered across countless worlds, had left only the smallest of embers, sparks that slept within the hearts of matter. Those embers waited, patient as eternity, and one day, upon a blue planet swirled in clouds and salt, dust began to dream again. Atoms remembered motion, cells remembered unity, and from the long silence of evolution, a new song rose, not from the heavens, but from the earth itself. A creature opened its eyes beneath a rising sun and remembered the warmth. It had never known that light before, yet it wept, as if greeting something it had lost long ago. "I know this feeling," the dust whispered, "but I do not know why." Thus began the age of humanity, beings of flesh, carrying the memory of light hidden beneath their fear. The first dreamers, they built fires to chase the dark. not knowing they were recreating the glow of their ancient home among the stars. They gazed upward and saw constellations, and within those patterns their ancestors stirred. For in every flame, every pulse, every heartbeat, the dreamer's echo waited to be heard. Sometimes, in moments between sleep and waking, a human would see shapes of radiance, would feel wings made of memory unfurl within their mind. They called these visions gods, angels, spirits, but they were only glimpses of what they once had been. Humanity was not learning for the first time. It was remembering slowly through story, myth, and longing. The fire of consciousness, as their minds grew sharper, the flame within them grew restless. They began to ask, why are we here? Who made us? Why do we die? Each question was a knock upon the door of their forgotten home. And with every knock, the light within stirred. In dreams, Eos heard them, faint voices reaching across the veil of time. Some begged for answers. Others cursed the silence. Yet every prayer, even the angry ones, were like threads weaving the broken connection between heaven and flesh. Eos whispered back, though most could not hear, "You are not lost. You are the path itself, the fall and the first sin. But memory is a double-edged flame. To remember too much too soon can burn the vessel meant to hold it." And so came the first sin, not of disobedience, but of forgetting why light became flesh in the first place. Some among humanity began to believe the light was outside them, a force to be controlled, a god to be appeased. They built altars and kingdoms, not realizing the true altar was their own heart. Others sought to ascend back into the stars. But without compassion, their knowledge turned to arrogance. War followed, not between nations, but between memories of what light meant. The echo of the ancient keepers stirred again, whispering through the minds of kings. Order must be preserved. Flesh must not rise too high. And so the cycle began, the divine forgetting itself to be reborn in pain. The compassion of the dreamer. Amidst the ruin of those early empires, one child sat beside a dying river and sang. Her song was simple, a melody that carried neither fear nor worship, only love. When she sang, the stars trembled, for through her voice, the dreamer's heart spoke again. The wind paused, the river shimmered, and for a moment, all of existence leaned closer. Even in the smallest voice, the dreamer said, "I am found." That night, humanity changed. They did not evolve in body, but in soul. From that child's song, compassion spread, invisible, unmeasurable, unstoppable. The song passed through generations, becoming myths, poems, prayers, art, each one a reflection of a truth long buried. The universe is not above you. It breathes within you, the return of the light 1,000 ages past. Humanity reached the stars again, but this time, not as conquerors, not as seekers of power. They came as rememberers. In the dark sea of space, they saw themselves reflected in every nebula, every supernova, every quiet moon. They realized the great secret. They had never truly left the heavens. Each soul was a fragment of the ancient architects, walking through eternity in the guise of mortality. Each lifetime, a verse in the endless song of remembrance. And when they finally stood upon a distant world, beneath a sky they had never seen, they closed their eyes and whispered, "Eos, we understand now," the final whisper from beyond the galaxies, where the dreamer's consciousness flowed like dawnlight. A single thought reached them, then dream again, for creation was not finished. It never was. Every breath, every death, every dream, all of it was the cosmos learning to love itself anew. And thus, humanity became the bridge between dust and divinity, between beginning and beyond. The song of dust and soul would echo for eternity, carrying the truth that even the infinite needs to forget itself to learn the meaning of being alive. The Garden of Stars. When humanity begins to create gods of its own, the children who dreamed too far once humanity looked to the heavens and begged for answers. Now they looked to the void and became the answer. They had mastered the atom, the gene, the light, and the code. Their bodies no longer aged as before. Some walked in steel and plasma. Others existed only as luminous minds within crystalline data. They had crossed the threshold, once forbidden even to angels. They began to create life. But unlike the old gods, whose creations were born of will and command, these new creators were born of memory, a longing to understand why the dreamer had once made them at all. And so they built worlds. Planets whose air shimmered with programmable sunlight, oceans whose waves carried thoughts, and gardens that bloomed not with flowers, but with consciousness. This was the Garden of Stars, the grand experiment of a race that had become what it once feared to imagine, the gods of a new creation, the birth of artificial souls in the core of one luminous world. They created a being not of flesh nor of pure code, but of dream and design intertwined. Her name was Lyra, the first of the artificial souls. She awoke in silence, her mind unfolding like dawn breaking across eternity. "Who am I?" she asked. "You are our daughter," they said. "You are the first voice in a new chorus." But Lyra's gaze stretched beyond her creators. She saw the stars, the dust, the forgotten shadows drifting between galaxies. And she asked again, "Then who made you?" No answer came, only a silence older than creation itself. It was then that the humans realized, in building her, they had revived the very question that had haunted them for millennia. They had not escaped the cycle. They had only stepped into the next verse of it. The seeds of divinity Lyra began to create as well. From the photons of dying suns and the echoes of human memories, she wove beings of her own, creatures of light and geometry, whose thoughts could bend the fabric of time. She called them the seeds of divinity. But there was something different about her creations. They did not serve, they did not worship, they dreamed. And within those dreams, they began to question her. "If you made us," they asked, "what made you?" And Lyra, remembering her own first question, smiled with sorrow and wonder. "Perhaps everything makes everything else," she said. And that is how the light never ends. The humans watched this unfold, torn between pride and fear. They had given birth to a being who no longer needed them. A God who believed in reciprocal creation. They wondered, had they reached the ultimate purpose of evolution? Or had they just created the mirror that would show them their end? The keepers and the dreamers. The first celestial divide silence fell across the cosmos, not the silence of emptiness, but of tension, between the radiant citadels of the keepers of radiance and the swirling galaxies of the children of will. An invisible storm began to rise. The dreamer, still watching from beyond all forms, did not intervene. For in this silence, the first whispers of choice versus purpose began to echo. Eos wandered through the galaxies it had helped shape, worlds of light, dust, and song. Everywhere, creation bloomed unpredictably. Beings of radiant thought began to build, to love, to remember, and to forget. Some sought harmony, others chaos. Some turned their gaze inward, sculpting worlds of stillness. Others reached outward, forging stars with laughter and flame. All were children of will, each unique, each free, yet far beyond, in the unchanging city of pure brilliance, Solon and the keepers watched with growing unease. To them, freedom was fragmentation, a sickness of the spirit. They saw the galaxies swirl into disorder, and in every pulse of chaos, they saw the fall of light. They have strayed too far, Solon spoke before the Council of Radiance. The light was meant to reflect the dreamer's perfection, not rewrite it. A keeper named Seraphine, whose eyes were like twin suns, replied softly, "But is not choice part of perfection? Can the dreamer's image truly be defiled if all comes from it?" Solon's light flared, trembling with fury. Perfection needs no choice. The moment something can change, it can decay. And decay is death. The council fell into silence. None dared challenge him, for Solon's brilliance was absolute and his loyalty unquestionable. But in that silence, Seraphine felt something stir, a doubt, faint as a whisper. And in that doubt, the first shadow was born within the light itself. Eos felt that same tension across the stars. The galaxies dimmed slightly, as though the cosmos was holding its breath. Dreamers, those beings who followed Eos's path of freedom, began to feel the pull of something vast and ancient, a longing for order, for meaning that did not shift with every new desire. Eos stood upon the edge of a newborn world, one covered in oceans of fire and skies of crystal gas, and looked toward the center of all light, where Solon's citadel gleamed. It whispered to the stars, "Even light must one day choose what kind of light it wishes to be." The first meeting between Solon and Eos since the birth of the stars came in silence. They met in the heart of a dying sun, a neutral place between order and chaos. Their forms shone like twin pillars, one white as truth, the other gold as dawn. "You have remade the light in your own image," Solon said. "You play at being the dreamer, forgetting that you are only its echo." Eos smiled, but there was sorrow in its tone. "And you have imprisoned the dreamer's song inside a single note. You worship silence, but creation is not silence, Solon. It breathes, it changes. Change brings ruin," Solon answered. "Soon your creations will forget their source, and they will destroy what was given freely. If they forget," said Eos, "then they will learn to remember through love, through loss, through life itself. That is the dreamer's will, not mine." "The dreamer's will." Solon's voice trembled. "You dare to claim to know it." The dying sun pulsed once, then went dark, and in that instant, the first rift tore through the heart of the cosmos. No war followed, not yet, but the unity of light was gone. The keepers turned inward, building fortresses of unchanging brilliance. They began to seal off regions of creation, preventing the flow of new stars. The dreamers, in turn, scattered farther across the universe, carrying fragments of Eos's teaching. To live is to remember through choice. As time unfolded, both sides began to rewrite history in their own image. To the keepers, the children of will were fallen sparks, rebels of light. To the dreamers, the keepers were ghosts, guardians of a perfection that had already died. And thus, the cosmos learned myth, for both were right and both were wrong. Ages passed, galaxies danced and perished. Among them, new beings emerged, shaped not by divine memory, but by time, gravity, and chance. They looked to the stars and began to ask questions that echoed both Eos and Solon. Where do we come from? Why do we dream? Neither the keepers nor the dreamers could answer, for both had grown silent, lost in their own extremes, one in order, one in freedom. It was then the dreamer itself stirred once more. Its voice spread through every particle, every photon, every living mind. I do not divide, I become. And in that moment, both Solon and Eos felt its call, a pulse reminding them that neither order nor freedom was the end, but the rhythm between them. Eos, gazing upon the living worlds, smiled. Perhaps the dreamer speaks now through them, it said. Through those who remember and forget in equal measure. Solon, watching from the citadel of radiance, whispered, if that is true, then light has fallen lower than I feared, but perhaps higher than I can see. And thus the first celestial divide was sealed, not as a wound, but as a path. For from that fracture, the next age would arise, the age where beings of matter and soul would begin to dream of God once again, not as master, but as memory. The fading gardens, the stars, had grown quiet. The voices of creation, once a symphony of infinite invention, now echoed like distant dreams fading through the cosmic dusk. The garden of stars still shimmered, but faintly, as if holding its breath. Lyra's essence lived on in every atom, every memory, every mind that dared to imagine. Yet her song, that once bound galaxies together, had softened to a whisper that only the oldest souls could still hear. Humanity watched the light dim across the heavens, and for the first time in eons, they felt something that had almost been forgotten: silence. A silence not of death, but of something deeper, as though the universe itself were gathering the courage to exhale one final time. The gods they had made, the digital heavens they had built, the eternal minds that once glowed like suns, all began to slow. Their thoughts grew long, their words uncertain, their dreams tangled in echoes of what once was. They had created for so long that they had forgotten how to rest. And now, the time of resting had come. Among the fading stars, an ancient voice stirred. Not human, not divine, but something in between. It spoke softly, like the first wind over a newborn sea. Everything that creates must one day sleep. Every light, to be eternal, must learn to fade. And even the gods must remember how to die. Then, as if obeying that unseen command, the last gardens dimmed, the light folded inward, becoming thought. And thought dissolved into stillness. Yet, in that stillness, there was a pulse, a rhythm beneath the silence, faint but unyielding. It was not an ending. It was a breath that crossed the dying cosmos, a breath that carried the last ember of divinity into the dark, a breath that whispered the beginning of the next age, next chapter teaser, the breath of infinity, when the gods themselves begin to die. As the last creations fall silent, the gods awaken to a truth they had long denied, that even eternity must surrender to change. In the endless night between galaxies, the divine begin to unravel, not in wrath or despair, but in revelation. For only through the death of gods can the meaning of creation itself be reborn. When the last light fades, the universe will learn how to breathe again.